This is about living in the time of the coronavirus epidemic. The curfew has been extended for at least another day, set again for 8 p.m. So essentially, we are returning for a completely different reason to a total lockdown. This time, instead of shelter in place, it's you best find a way to get your ass off the streets. Nobody says a word about the coronavirus anymore, though I must presume the epidemic continues. People still go around wearing masks, including some of the protesters. It's complicated, or I should say more complicated, having to cope with or balance the virus and the reaction that started with the death of the man in Minneapolis. Funny how it's all about death, the one common thread. Despite the gruesome evidence of the videos, lawyers are now saying that the prosecution and conviction of the cop will not be a simple slam dunk. I think I heard there were multiple autopsies with differing results. And I also heard that the two men knew each other. They both worked as bouncers at a nightclub. So the fatal attack may have been more personal than racial, despite the obvious appearance. It would not surprise me if the case became yet another mystery in this world of shadows. Maybe Antifa told the cop to do it. The field mouse said that he does not need the trumpet soldiers. He thinks his state will be fine. His main concern about the protests is the lack of social distancing. He says we'll have to see what the numbers look like 2 weeks from now to see if the gathering of protesters spread the virus. The field mouse was more concerned with the virus. He seemed to think that the protests had been made and we would move on, back to facing up to the virus. He said he's going to open museums and zoos in 2 days, and he said it looked like schools could open for children in the fall, with safety being the paramount issue, of course. The protests were a challenge to his authority, but with the virus, the field mouse is still in charge. He calls the shots. He loves us, each of us made in the image of God, even the protesters, even the terrorists, if they're out there. I think in order to make things, you have to learn patience. Building is often a slow process, step after meticulous step. The trumpet is not a patient person. That isn't in his makeup. He wants everything done yesterday. The only things he has ever made are deals, his precious deals. Anything that takes time, a great deal of time, that's not his focus. Therefore, I wonder how effective he will be if the virus persists longer than the fall, the summer, into next year. As for the field mouse, he'd be perfectly content with that. He could do this forever. One of the reasons politics is so iffy is that we elect a person to a position, and that position is essentially nothing, an empty nest. What matters is the job that person is called upon to do, especially if it is a big job or a crisis. Already, in the trumpet, we can see signs of his impatience as he calls for more direct force in dealing with the protesters and the vandals. I think he's getting fidgety, his brand of corona crazy. Our female county commissioner, who hasn't cried since she announced the first deaths by virus in the county, cried today when she spoke about walking the downtown streets and seeing the smashed windows, broken glass, and some boarded up to stop looters. Last night was fairly peaceful in the city, but I think the curfew still applies. The trumpet could not possibly do worse than he is doing. He's coming apart. Yesterday, he wanted a photo op in front of a church. There were demonstrators there. Tear gas dispersed them and the picture was taken. He seems completely unconcerned that many people see him as a kind of monster. And he's growing into the role. And Joe Biden, aka the Pander Man, who sees himself as a white Obama, is doing everything he can to bash the trumpet. an easy chore with the trumpet's help, and hold himself up as the last best hope for black people. The disgrace I see is that this nation will have to choose its leader from two very old, very white, very male candidates. That's a crying shame. I'm older than dirt, and those two are both older than me. I do not see them as representing this country or the future. Their day is past. Yet it is those two, the trumpet and the pander man, that we get, along with the virus and the protests. Oh boy.